You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line right now is a gentleman who, I got to tell you, my grandmother, my mother-in-law, I should say, who we call Gran lovingly, is the most excited for me to have on the show in a long time. Obviously, a big fan of Greg Gutfeld, that she is. I'm talking about wrestling's tie to the Greg Gutfeld show, NWA TV champion Tyrus. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, and please tell Grandma thank you so much for watching.
You got it. I appreciate that, sir. And let's start with the book, and then we'll talk a little bit about the NWA and try to cover everything and try to do it in a short amount of time. Does that sound good?
Sounds like the story of my life. Yep.
All right. Well, of course, the book is out. You're a New York Times bestseller, Just Tyrus. I actually was thumbing through it last night, and man, this is a raw, real book. It's not your typical wrestler book. It's different than just a wrestling book. I guess my question is, how has the reaction been so far to people reading and finding out who Just Tyrus really is?
You know, to use the term shocking would be an understatement. I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. I thought, like, my goal was when I wrote was like, if I could break the top 500, you know, like I think that would be a good sign that, because I wanted to continue to write, but you, just like anything else, you just don't know if you're going to be successful at it unless you do it. So, you know, my goal was if I broke into like the top 500, that would be saying something. And at least in terms of like, well, at least it's getting enough attention. But I had no idea it was going to sell out in 2 hours. And I was completely shocked at the reviews and stuff, and being a New York Times bestseller. And probably the one that's most important to me was the Amazon #1 bestseller, to be the #1 book in Amazon, because that's like just the raw data of people actually buying your book. New York Times can be a tad bit, I don't want to say political, but like it's a curation, which means it's based on how big your publisher is. So, and how many stores your books are shipped to, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're getting bought. So you could have a New York Times bestseller, but no one actually knows your book because they're not reading it. So, and to have both, and then to be in the USA and the Wall Street Journal and all that stuff was exciting. It was fun. It was definitely humbling, and I'm extremely thankful. And at the same time, it's also like walking around the town naked for an afternoon, because now, you know, before people would just yell, "Hey, Tyrus," or "Tyrese," or "Brodus," or "Bradus," or something like that. And they would know, they'd ask me a question about wrestling, or they would ask me a question about Fox. But now they're going to ask me questions about me, and sometimes you're not always prepared for that. But that's, you know, that's the side effect when you put yourself out there and people actually read it. They're going to have some questions for you.
Absolutely. And as I said, it's a very raw book. You go into real places that I don't think people realized you would go into. Was being that introspective and going into those places and bringing that out in this book a difficult thing for you to do?
It was, like I said, originally it was like 356 pages, and we cut a lot out. And, you know, it was just, they thought that maybe I was being a little too real about some things. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll save it for a second book if it ever happens. And good thing I saved it. But I think it's important, especially in this day and age, where we have so many first world problems, that people forget about what the struggle is. We have, you know, as we're very successful, you know, and the worst part of our day is, you know, we didn't get what we wanted on our TV show or whatever. We really don't have bad days. And it was kind of a reminder to myself. I think everyone should write a book, whether they get it published or not, but at least an op-ed about yourself, to yourself, I think is extremely therapeutic. It also helps you put things in perspective. I think one of the things the book is about is taking ownership of your mistakes and not accepting no. And what I mean by that is, if I listened to every time somebody didn't believe in me, didn't like in me, I'd still be in Lynn, Massachusetts right now. You know, my first attempt to get in the WWE, I was laughed at. You know, Carl DeMarco in the Toronto Wrestling Build is loud. His secretary laughed at me. He looked at me up and down, and he was like, "What? I don't get it." You know, like, you can't get any more You can't get any more colder than that, and
No, you don't.
And the same thing, football, I got cut a few times, or, I had an attitude problem. I was an angry kid. I mean, jobs, auditions, and if you can have what I call the golden ticket, where you can blame everyone for your issues, but you never grow. And even dealing with, and I talk a lot about the book, the issues I had with my stepfather, because that was an important part of me building strength. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I think if anyone's kind of gone through that, and that's the one thing that I was surprised by, is how many people had similar stories, different but similar, or struggles, and so there's a camaraderie there. There's a validation there when someone doesn't sugarcoat it, and more importantly, the book isn't a whiny baby like poor me. I think that's important, because we have too much of that poor me thing, or you have to accept me because if you don't, there's something wrong with it. That's not true either. So,
yeah, I agree. It's a totally realistic look at the life that you've led, and it's far more. Yeah, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time, over 10 years now, and to see this story that I didn't even know was who you are, it was incredible. So I really do commend you on a read that was different than I expected. Certainly different than I was expecting when I read it.
It was a shoot, as we like to say.
That's right. That's right. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of wrestling questions?
Oh, please. I couldn't have a conversation without talking wrestling.
All right. So, like I said, I'm a longtime wrestling fan. I'm a 40-year-old guy. I've been watching wrestling since the mid-'80s. I love pro wrestling. And when I first saw you come out as Brodus Clay, the first thing that I thought was, it's almost like Dusty in the polka dots. I don't know why, but that's like what I thought.
Well, it's got a huge part in it.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. How much of Dusty was really in that whole Brodus Clay?
Every nook and cranny. The only thing we couldn't agree on was the tracksuit. But I listen, if I'm going out there, I'm going out like Run DMC. So, and then Vince McMahon picked the color red, and I hated the color red because I thought I got apple in it. But he picked the color red because that is a encourager not to gain weight. So if you're in bright red, you're going to skip the cake at catering. So tough love, as they say. But no, because I had been training with Arn Anderson probably for a year and a half. I mean, just as he said, how many shirts do you have to change? And we were basically working on just being a working machine. Like, I wasn't allowed to be a big man. He felt like being a good big man was not a compliment. So I wanted to work like him and be aggressive like him. And if you look at my stuff on Superstars and my work with like Edge and Christian, I was working like that, and that's what my focus was. And I always had ability on the microphone, but I figured that would come. Like, let the work do the talking, and then surprise everybody when you get on the mic. And I did that at NXT when I cut that promo on them when I didn't win it, and I just I went in on them. And my point was I didn't need to win it, and I think I said, I don't need a parking lot I don't need a roster spot, I just need a parking lot or something like that.
Awesome.
But so when Triple H came to me, and Triple H and Stephanie were extremely, extremely supportive, and when I make jokes, I'm a funny guy in the locker room. I've always been, comedy. I make jokes about just about anything, and we have a fun locker room, and apparently the boss heard me cracking jokes. And his equation, if a guy's funny, he's babyface. So, and even more of that, if you're really funny, you have to dance too. Don't ask me how you put it together, but that's, everyone who knows anything about Mr. McMahon's history is that fool loves to dance.
That's true.
and he asked you to do it, you're going to do it. But I panicked when Triple H came to me. We had already started running the vignettes. The House of Pain gimmick was in full swing. And he said that the boss had a change in heart. And I freaked out. And I just said that my gut reaction was, can I go get with Dusty at FCW for a few days and try to figure it out? And he was like, yeah, go ahead, do what you need to do. But this is the direction we're going. It's not what we want, but it's what we have. And I was like, straight up. So I went there, and when he was waiting on me, when he had the whole arena cleared out, and I was bitching and moaning, angry, and I was like, this is not right. Like, I want Cena. I don't, this is what I was training for Cena. I want to get my hands on Cena, And he was like, this is where you at. And as he says, he always likes to, one of the things I loved about him is he always took the heat off you in terms of like, he grabbed me on my face and he just said, you are mine. And so you have to pay for my sins. When they put me in the polka dots, do you think I wanted to be in polka dots? I was a 3-time world champion. I said, yes, you were. I said, you also were the booker. He said, shut up. And he said, and I did it because I had to feed my family. And I had to, and I turned it on him and I made it work. And you saying you can't do the same thing? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, I said, but I don't like to dance. And he's like, well, then you better start dancing. And he had the sound guy, he had moves like Jagger come on. And he's like, let's dance. And he made me dance with him for probably an hour and a half. And it was it was awkward as you could possibly be because I'm not trying to cooperate. And, but then I just didn't have a choice, and next thing you know, I'm literally doing America's Dream with him all around the arena. And then he stopped dancing and I kept dancing. And he's like, see, you got it. He goes, you know what to do. He's like, when you smell the popcorn and you hear those fans cheering, you'll know exactly what to do because you know my history. You are me. I've spent time. I've taken you under my wing, and I haven't taught you about wrestling. I've taught you about life. And he was such a big guy. I miss him. He's
absolutely.
Damn it. So my last day in the WWE, I also spent with Dusty. And he was playing Neil Diamond in the ring, and I was rolling around. And he just said to me, I need you to pay. I think he knew, but he would never tell me because he wasn't break. But he just told me how important it was I needed to paint my canvas and that I was bigger than this place. And that when I paint my canvas, everybody will know it. And I definitely feel that I've painted my canvas.
I agree. That's incredible.
And,
thank you for that.
And to tie it all back into wrestling, I went out there as a Funkasaurus every night that I went out there. I was a little kid who was the American Dream that night. I was, in my mind, whenever I wrestled Sandow, I was wrestling Tully Blanchard. Whenever I was with Flair, I was in there with Flair. Like that's how I looked at it. And and sometimes I didn't imitate him because there's only one, the American Dream, and he can never be imitated or duplicated. But you can his influence, and there's like I said, there's only one Brodus Clay. I don't think anyone could do what I did and how I did it. And now got over to when the opportunity came to be in the NWA. And unfortunately for Pope, when I saw that World Television title was out there, and that was a title that the American Dream hand built himself, I was all over it. And I knew it would be a quick it would be, and originally it was, you have 7 title defenses, and then you turn it in for a title shot. And I was like, oh, you don't turn this in. And so even though this upcoming pay-per-view, I will officially be the number 1 contender for the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, whatever that situation, whether it's Matt with his one arm or Nick or even my cousin Trevor and however that smoke clears and that, they're going to have to deal with me sooner than later. But it is a awesome time to be back in the sport that I love so much. And the great thing about the NWA and Billy Corgan is it works with my schedule. And right now I'm literally burning the midnight oil between trying to make book signings for my fans and
doing things like this and the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah. Hey, but it's either, as they say, it's all or nothing, man. Peaks or valley. When you're hot, you're hot. And if you want to be great, you got to do the work. It's not going to do it for you. And there's no days off when you're trying to do something special. So, but
and the cool thing about what Billy Corgan is doing is that, and I just talked about this with VSK, who's a member of Matt Cardona's family, is that when you watch NWA Power, it almost is like we're back to turning on TBS on 6:05 on a Saturday night in late 80s, when you would have seen somebody like Dusty Rhodes in the ring. The way that Billy Corgan has it set up, it looks like that. It has that feel, that vibe, that old school wrestling vibe that so many people have been clamoring for. What do you think of Billy Corgan's image of pro wrestling?
Well, we share a similar value, and when I saw the first episode of the NWA, because at the time I was contemplating retirement, and I was just trying to figure out what my next move was and if I still even wanted it anymore. But when I saw that first show, I was like, okay, I'm interested in this because this is something I grew up on. The only thing I would argue with on is like Dusty was brilliant because he never ever wrestled on TBS. He came out, he cut his promo, and every once in a while he'd go out there and put hands on somebody, usually a Horseman or Big Bubba Rogers. But he was always clever that way. Now Arn and Tully, they'd be working, and now watching back on that, obviously they all called it out there. But it's a great tradition, and honestly, man, I think it's going to happen. And if Billy does end up switching to TV, I hope he does look for a Saturday morning, a Saturday afternoon, because two things that were consistent in my household: the vacuum cleaner on a Saturday and watching wrestling. So hearing my mom vacuum and me sitting as close as I can to the TV so I can hear it, and then her scream, "Get back, you're going to burn your eyes out." Those memories are as fun as it could possibly be. And it was WWF Superstars. Then you go out and play, and then you come in for lunch, go out and play some more, and then you'd get your behind in the house so you could watch 2 hours of Superstation, and that was pretty much my weekend for most of my childhood.
Mine too. Absolutely. You got me on that.
I took it to hope, and then it went out to the unfortunate, kids, you don't try this at home. Those commercials were not going on, and there was 4 Horsemen battles in my neighborhood going on, or it was, I was always a member of the Heenan family, and my brother and his friends were always like Hogan, or, and I was always, Mr. Wonderful was my favorite, and Andre the Giant when he turned heel. I actually cried at WrestleMania 3 when he lost. Cried like a baby.
Wow.
I was so mad. Oh, I was so mad. Like,
wow.
No, beat Andre. He just slammed him. He kicked out, and then when I remember walking to school and Andre won it and surrendered it to
DiBiase.
I remember still saying he was still champ, though. I'm talking trash in the schoolyard. He was champ. Doesn't matter. He was champ.
That's true. And you're right. Absolutely. You're going to be facing Mims at the Always Ready pay-per-view on the 11th. What's your thoughts on that big guy? He looks like he might be a challenge for that TV title.
Well, here's the thing, and I've been doing some, another cool thing I've been doing with NWA is they've allowed me to get in there and do my own Gorilla Monsoon, Dusty Rhodes stuff on calling matches and being a part of that. And there are no easy ways in NWA right now. And Mims is probably the most improved talent on the roster. His marketing could use some help. I don't know about Big Strong Mims, but hey, it's his journey, it's his world. But he has grown. We've faced each other before, and he was inexperienced then, and now he's not inexperienced anymore. I think now he's turned the corner where he's in. I think he's in either top 2 or 3 for every title in the NWA. I'm not taking him for granted, but he does stand in the way of what I have to get done, unfortunately for him. And also, I have noticed that since I've come on, his entire look has changed. And, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. You know what I'm saying? Because he was a trunks guy, and now he's a singlet guy that just happens to be cut in the same colors as mine. And I get it. And maybe he's playing mind tricks. I don't know, but he's dealing with the ultimate veteran. I've seen it all. I've done it all. So nothing surprises me. And although I am touched that he would mark himself after me, I'm not ready to pass the torch by any stretch of the imagination. So hopefully he brings his A game, because I'm going to bring mine. And when it's all said and done, the reigning, defending, undefeated, undisputed NWA World Television Champ will also be in line to be the first unified World Television Champion, NWA Champion. Now, I know the Midnight Express did it in the tag team. They were United States Tag Champs, and then they were World Tag Champs. And just like them, I'll do the right thing, and I will surrender the NWA World Television title when that day happens. But until then, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But that's the plan. I'm laying it out for me to play it out. That is the plan. But right now, my focus is on giving Mims Goodnight Irene, which is that patented heart punch, and moving on with things. I just thought of that. Hey, you just gave me a name for it. I've been figuring out what I want to call it and talking to you about wrestling. And I just remember that was what Gorilla Monsoon used to call.
Gorilla Monsoon, that's right.
He used to call Adrian Adonis a sleeper hold. Good night, Irene. So
that's right.
Back. What an underrated wrestler. What one of the greatest wrestlers, Adrian Adonis. And that
Adrian Adonis, adorable one. Yes, indeed.
Does not get enough credit. And everyone talks about Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat and WrestleMania 3, and rightfully so. Probably the greatest match that I ever witnessed. But Adrian Adonis and Piper were a close second. Like that match, if you watch that crowd reaction, and it also made a big star that night. His name was Brutus Beefcake. But
that's right.
Anyone who hasn't watched that match, go back and watch that. So we donned it here. You can call this story "Good Night, Irene." So. You have christened the name of my finish. So there we go.
Very good. Do you have time for a few more questions? I don't want to keep you too long.
Dude, go ahead.
All right. So I got to talk a little bit about Fox News and Greg Gutfeld. And, you're probably as known as a political communicator, of somebody who talks about the world events now as you are a pro wrestler, even though you have that belt front and center most of the time. It's still... you're a big part of this Greg Gutfeld expansion on Fox News. He's on all the time. What's your thoughts on not what your thoughts on, but how did you end up getting paired up with it? Because it wouldn't necessarily be somebody that I'd be comparing to Charles Krauthammer, as Greg Gutfeld did the other day, compared you to him. You wouldn't be my first wrestler that I would do that. Maybe Jesse Ventura might have been first in that respect, but Tyrus definitely has stepped into that role.
Well, for one, I think if you're truly talented and you have something to say, and you can be able to cross over, and that's the thing. Wrestlers are probably, I think, the most talented entertainers out there. We don't get enough credit for that. And as cerebral as you have to be in the sport of wrestling, we see the world, we travel, we see everyday people. We know more about the pulse of what's going on in America than I would say just about any other type of entertainment or employment there is, because we know everyone. We go everywhere. We see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you have a good formed opinion of what's going on. And, I had great role models like Kane, who would spend time in the locker room with everybody and talk about being fiscally responsible and saving your money. John Laurinaitis would always tell you what to put away for taxes and stuff. So we always had guys that were very active and stuff. And Daniel Bryan is another guy who was always, we'd have a lot of political conversations and stuff. And, we're all focused on taxes, because when you wrestle in 50 states, you get 50 different sets of taxes. So you're very,
oh boy,
you better know what's going on. So you start talking about it. And I've been known or rumored to have the gift of gab. So, I speak on it in a funny way, and I'm a comedian. And so, I kind of put the two together, and Gutfeld and we actually met on the internet, as creepy as that sounds. And it was watching Red Eye, and he's had some wrestlers on there before. It escapes me, but he's had some. All people walk a different life. But anyway, somebody said something, tried to troll him, and I fired back on something. I was bored. I think Heath Slater was playing country western music and singing the songs while he was driving on the road, and I was looking at my Twitter trying to keep myself from jumping out of the car. And I saw that someone threw shade on Gutfeld, so I fired back, and he found it hilarious. And he asked me if I wanted to come on the show. So I ended up coming on the show, and it's about promos. And the thing about promos are about life. And if you're good at it, people identify if you keep it real. You can't be
right.
You can't read a script. You can't say something that you're not. And the reason, when you have a mentor like the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, who he spit on it, he talked about it. You knew what was going on in his life. You knew when he was put out on the street, when he was sitting on his reclining chair outside his house waiting for Dick Murdoch to show up with a Cadillac to pick him up. Like, you knew what was going on in his world, and that was something that, and Snoop is the same thing. His raps are based on what was going on in his world. So talk about what you know about, and you'll never forget anything. So when somebody forgets what they're saying, then they shouldn't be saying it in the first place. So, and that's kind of been my thing, and just keep it real. And the wonderful thing about Fox is that they've never, ever asked me to speak in any which way. And I'm a Republican, but I'm a middle of the road guy. And
right.
I'll speak on it. And if I don't like something that President Trump did, I speak on it. If I like something that President Biden did, I'll speak on it. But to be honest, there hasn't been much of that. So
that's right.
But you have to, if you're real, people get behind you. Although I had no idea that the fan support would cross over. My fans would go with me, because that's rare. Usually when you leave, the machine, that's your ass. You know what I'm saying? Like, even going over to Impact, they were like, hey, do you want to make a play on Brodus and this, that, whatever? And John Gerbach, we sat down. He's like, Brodus he belongs to the WWE, and I think you got to reinvent yourself. I think that, and we had that conversation, and I said, you're right. I agree with you. I think I need to reinvent myself, and I want to get back to what Arn Anderson and I were working on before Brodus Clay, and I had a lot in the gas tank to prove in terms of being back to being a technically sound monster. So that was the goal, and that's what I've accomplished, and that's why, to sum it all up, that's why it's Just Tyrus, because when it came down to it, I just had to get back. If you're truly talented, you'll always rise to the top, and it doesn't. So when guys say, oh, the promoter didn't like me, or the boss didn't like me, or the coach didn't want me there, well, that's just one. And it's not what they think of you, because in life, we're going to have people that dislike us. You've had people, I've had people. The difference is when someone tells you something, you just can't accept it. And your reaction it's your reaction is what you're defined by. It's not who hits you in the mouth. It's what you do after you get hit that defines how people talk about you. And that was the point of the book, and that's pretty much how I've lived my life. And so I've been able to go through so many transitions, because to go from a football player to a teacher to a bodyguard to a professional wrestler, acting, and then become an author and a TV personality for a major network on the #1 show in the country. All that is, you got to really believe in yourself and not take, and excuse my language, not take shit from no one.
That's perfect.
You can't get there if you, but at the same time, you got to humble yourself. Don't ever, I think you can take time, like they sent me a plaque for all the accolades of my book, and I took about 20 minutes to sit and tease my friends like Dick Murdoch and Aaron, and I love messing with Trevor. Trevor Murdoch. Picking on cousin Trevor is literally the happiest time of my day. And I love to send him successful things I've done. And we have a podcast. I don't know if and maybe you like to come on sometime. It's called Three Wise Men. And it's, Fox allowed me an extra podcast. And I was like, I want to bring my wrestling buddies on. And they're like, dear God, help us. And but it's killing. It's killing. We're getting sponsors and everything now. But Trevor does it with me, and Sandow does it. And I even found, believe it or not, Kevin Kiley, old A-Ride, found him. He's alive and well. And we just had Godfather on this week. So we have a lot of fun. Yeah, Chris Adonis is on there. We got a pretty good squad of guys. We bring in different boys. And we had Matt Morgan. He came on. He just became mayor. So it's an outlet for guys, for the world to see. I'm not the only one. I don't know if it's a good idea or not on my part, but there's a lot of doors being opened up, and I think that's really important, and I'm just excited. It's just a fun time right now to be in wrestling. There's so many outlets. There's so many guys that are working and having opportunities. It's really great to see. And the NWA is more in the lane. It's got big guys in traditional wrestling, and that's exactly where I want to be. And it's growing. I think we're I think we're just about sold out. I got my books. I am doing a book signing there as well.
That's right. Yep.
11. So we got a lot of fun stuff, and it's just a great time to be in wrestling and to just be on the forefront of doing some new things. And I'm glad that I'm kind of leading the way that way. So that whole saying about you mid card isn't a top guy. Well, I think we know that doesn't mean anything. So.
Very cool. Well, I've got one more question for you, then I'll do one last little pitch for the book. But kind of a current affairs thing going on. Somebody that you were tied to in the WWE was Naomi, and of course she's been in the wrestling headlines, I don't know, 600, 700, 800 times a day ever since a couple weeks ago on Monday night when she and Sasha Banks decided to not follow the script, which is, I believe, how WWE even put it in a press release. What is your thoughts on her doing that and their... not that everybody believes that kayfabe was still a thing anyway, but kind of putting a bullet in it by just saying, hey, this is a scripted show.
I rarely will question anything, but I think you should protect the magic at all costs. I think you could say it in another way, just similar to where if somebody in the NBA or the NFL wasn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. But, you know, even Sasha. So I was fighting hard for Sasha to be one of the Funkadactyls. I thought she was super, super talented, and I wasn't wrong. And I actually, there was a tryout in Boston that for whatever reason, they had her off it, and she shot me a text, and so I took it to Mr. Regal, and I was like, hey, she was here last time. She was great. Like, and he took a chance, and he literally put his, I guess he put his job on the line. I didn't know that part, but I went to him, and he was like, you believe in her that much? And I was like, yeah, she's really good, man. And she came in, and of course she knocked it out of the park. She got signed, and you know, she's been a star, and ever since. And I remember her, you know, and she's Snoop's family. So Snoop gave me a call and said, "Good looking out." I said, "No, it wasn't me. It was her. All I did was open the door. All I did was connect the dots. She ran with it." But you know, they're both first ballot Hall of Famers, and they're great athletes, not just, you know, divas or women wrestlers. So I always say this: if you're going to make a stand like that, as long as you understand what you're walking away from, and if you're good with it, I'm good with it. But you know, the fans suffer. They only got a little taste of them being tag champs, and you know, I'm very biased when it comes to Naomi, because and she should have been like 5 times or 10 times world women's champion. She's the greatest pure athlete I think we had coming out of that group of that came out of FCW, and there's a long list of names that came out of there. But and at the same time, WWE is a business, and you got to follow the plan. And sometimes you don't follow the plan; there are consequences. I know that better than anybody. And you can, and as long as you're okay with it, and you go to sleep at night knowing that you made the best decision for you, then it's between her and her family. And unfortunately, the fans, they don't get to see the tag champs, but hopefully they can work things out. And if they can't, as long as they're prepared for life after the WWE, then the world will move on.
Awesome. Final kind of question, and I'll let you go. I'm sorry for taking so much of your time.
Hey, anytime, man. Anytime.
The final question is basically a plug for the book, but also talking about NWA, and that is, how cool would it be, instead of having that TV title out in the forefront, to have the NWA World Heavyweight Championship out on the table, out over your shoulder on Fox News, with more people watching you than are watching any wrestling show right now, with a belt around your shoulder?
That is the goal. That to go in the history books with the greats, like the American Dream, for me would be a life goal, and to sit there with the World Heavyweight Championship, with the world at least for one night, both shoulders full. Then I will publicly, you know, surrender the World Television Champion. They can have one of those awesome tournaments. But yeah, it's the goal. And I think after that, to be honest with you, it would be hard pressed to, obviously you want to defend it a few times, but I think at that point I would have to start thinking about calling it a day. You know, I think and that's the goal, if I'm able to accomplish that and the world is able to see the NWA on the big stage, and the World Television Championship is, I think I've brought the illustriousness back to us, the credibility back to it, but at the end of the day, it is not the World Heavyweight Championship. So, and Matt Cardona, I think, has been doing a great job of that. And, you know, the only difference between me and him is I'm in the TV world, he's in the internet world, and both my arms work. So I definitely have.
That's true. All right. Man, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. This was incredible, anytime, and thank you so much.
Yep, and you know, make sure you guys check it out. If you can't be there in person, it'll be on Fight TV.
Fight TV, you can check it out at nationalwrestlingalliance.com. June 11th, always ready, and it's going to be a very, very cool weekend of events for you guys in Tennessee, and man, it's going to be great. So I thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me once again.
Anytime you want to talk, please let me know. The answer is always yes.
I appreciate it. I'll let you get on to probably the next one. But, hey, thank you so much.
Thank you, boss.
Take care, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive
Interactive Wrestling Radio. 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 Oh, Rush.
Featuring the interactive interview.
Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Interactive interview. Oh yeah.
Formerly The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze.
The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze rock.
Yo, Maniacs, so what you gonna do when the Blaze of Mania runs wild on you?
On WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And now we shamelessly name drop from our history.
The Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
All right, everybody. Viva la raza. Viva la raza.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, ladies.
Hey guys, we had a lovely conversation.
First lady.
Absolutely. Oh, look at me. She's so kooky.
Be there. Where else?
Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling.
Epicenter.
Oh my God, you win! Love being interactive.
I was not shooting. Yeah. I almost missed my pants. Breaking neck. I got 2 words for you. I've heard a lot about you guys. I see my language. You're going to go to the shop. I see a no. Into the many.
No nerves.
That was great. It's going to be cool. Woo! What it's all about. The purest point of view. The living legend. Champion. Arrogant.
Jesus makes me.
Instead of statement, I'm talking to you.
So lonely without you.
Yeah.
In the land of extreme.
Testify. Nevermore. Interactive interview. I'm not just the best. Interactive interview with a plastic
You
head.
earn the right.
Nobody. You better keep listening. Thank you very much. Controversy creates cash. Professional
Made
wrestling.
in the USA, baby.
Memphis wrestling. The guy on fire.
I'm not
bad.
We were sexy.
What a show.
One and only.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Interactive interview. We took care of the business. This isn't ballet. We are huge with this whole. You're where it's at. You better recognize who's the best. Make sure to tune in each and every week. I'll come out of your computer. Knock down your door and turn it on for you. Or else I'm going to kick your stinking teeth in. And that's the bottom line. Have a nice day.
It's showtime!
Don't forget to like and subscribe.